Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
On this auspicious day of Ganesh Chaturthi, let us all invoke the blessings of Lord Ganesha, the Supreme Brahman, the Lord of success, for the prosperity and well-being of one and all. Let us also salute the Guru Parampara, the galaxy of sages and saints who have kept this knowledge alive for us from time immemorial. We really know not when this parampara started, but the tradition goes as far as one can conceive and beyond that also. The proof is that you go to Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna gives lots of valuable advice, and he says all this have come from the rishis, the Upanishads. He never arrogates anything to himself. Then you go to Upanishads where the masters say, Iti Shushruma Purvesham. Iti Shushruma Purvesham means our forefathers have told this to us, our masters have told this to us. So there is absolutely no arrogation. It is not mere humility, but it's a matter of fact. It's a matter of fact that this has been passed on from generation to generation without distortion. So our salutation is there for the entire parampara itself. And that is why on the Guru Purnima day, which is on sage Vedavyasa's birthday, we take it as a day that is dedicated to all the Gurus. So let us invoke the blessings of the entire Guru Parampara, without which, in fact, the whole functioning of the world is impossible. Now, Vedanta, as you all know, is a science of the eternal. When we say science, it is exactly like science that it cannot be arrogated to any one personality or few personalities. Just as we say science is a contribution of galaxy of scientists, right from, again, there is no fixation of time there. Galileo and Newton and Archimedes and Cavendish, there are any number of scientists, and it will continue also because they keep on unearthing laws after laws. Exactly like that, Vedanta is a science. It deals with where, let us say, the science ends. Rather, physics ends at a point and metaphysics starts at a point. This is exactly an internal science vis-a-vis all other sciences which deal with the external world. Therefore, it is not proper to attribute anything or give more weightage to any personality at all. Yet, today we will try to fathom the depth of one great personality called Swami Rama Tirtha, a towering personality among all the self-realized sages of the whole universe. Now, before we venture into that, we have to only understand one thing, that most of us, I would say most of us in India also and abroad, do not know about Swami Rama Tirtha in general. Let us say as well we know about other great saints. We all know about Swami Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. We all know about the great Swami Vivekananda. We all know about Adi Shankaracharya. There are again galaxy of sages and saints whom we know, but as you see here, it is from 1873 to 1906, a short span of life which he lived. Nobody knows. Now, what could be the reason? The reason is only one, that he came like a flash of lightning. He came as a flash of lightning. Just as you don't capture lightning, we did not capture Swami Rama Tirtha. And yet you will find that few people who are attuned to the very highest, they were able to capture him. Swami Ramana Maharishi knew about Swami Rama Tirtha. In English it is said that you need one Milton to understand another Milton. Exactly like that, one Rama is required to understand another Rama. So Swami Rama Tirtha called himself only Rama. So you require a caliber of Rama to understand Rama. He was like a flash of lightning which illumines the darkness and gives all the power of the electricity, and it disappears immediately. He was exactly like that. It is not a law, but as a general rule you can take that the best of the things are never known. All of us know about the cars like Mercedes-Benz and BMW, but it is said they are not the costliest cars or the most stylish cars. The rest of the cars you have to make special orders and procure them. It's in France or Sweden somewhere. Now, people who are attuned at that level, they will know about that car and they will procure and own that car and enjoy that car. Similarly, all of us know about Rolex watches and many of us believe that is the best, but a watch called Patek Philippe which has the office in Switzerland only, they don't advertise. These greatest of things never advertise themselves. It is only available for certain subtle personalities who can attune at that level. That applies to everything. It applies to your wristwatch, it applies to your car, it applies to even the great personalities. This you can say as a rule. Therefore, Swami Rama Tirtha was one such towering personality who was not known. The best of the things are never known. And as I said, those who attune to that level, they will know. And thus Swami Rama Tirtha was known to few at that point of time. Now, what we will do today is like a person standing on the shore of an ocean, trying to fathom the depth of the ocean. We will try and know or understand as much the intrinsic being of Swami Rama Tirtha as he was. It is any amount of explanation, any amount of understanding or reading cannot capture really the spirit of Swami Rama Tirtha unless otherwise we become one with him and find it. Yet we can make that attempt just as a child will try to fathom the depth of the ocean by standing from the shores of the ocean. As far as the life history of Swami Rama Tirtha is concerned, it is quite easy because in terms of our time, he lived a very short span of life, just 33 years. So life history is very easy to cover. He was born in a place called Murariwala. It's in the district of Gujranwala in Punjab, near, which is now in Pakistan, on 22nd October 1873. So if at all we have one reason to visit Pakistan, it is to see this village where he was born. It is now in Pakistan. Into a very poor Brahmin family. He was called Gosai Tirtha Ram. He lost his mother a few days after his birth. And his childhood life is of extreme inspiration. He went through extreme hardship in childhood. Now this developed a perseverance in him and a conviction in him, as though he was having that adamantine will, which he will say later, which was required for a person to realize the self. To that extent, that will was necessary, and the glimpses of which he showed throughout his childhood. And as he was born into a cult of Vaishnavite, so he learnt all the Puranic stories. He was devoted to Lord Krishna. He would cry, shed tears of joy as he heard the stories of Lord Krishna, which thrilled him exactly. And he was extraordinary and brilliant in his studies. Plus, he never shied away from hard work. In fact, this is the definition of a genius. Again, it is not a law, but as a general rule, you will find that there are two classes of people in this world. One set of people have a general brilliance in them ingrained. If they go through a book, probably they will understand the contents of the book very easily. They have so much of brilliance. But you won't find them more successful because they are not ready to put in hard work or effort. The other set of people, they will put in hard work and effort, but they are not blessed with brilliance or intelligence. This is again, as I say, as a general rule you can say. Rarely you will find a person who is a combination of these two. That is, he is both hard-working as well as he is brilliant. Such persons are rare, and they alone can be called as genius. So, if you want a definition of genius, now please don't look into dictionary. Genius can be defined as a person who has this combination of industry and intelligence, which usually do not go together. So, if a person has these two going together, he is a genius, and glimpses of Swami Rama as a genius was very much evident in his childhood itself. His elementary schooling was in his village, metric at the district school in Gujranwala. There he came in contact with a gentleman called Dhanna Bhagat. This Dhanna Bhagat helped Swami Rama in a very great way, and he held him in a very high esteem as his mentor, his guide. So he would look up to him for all the guidance in the childhood, and he never lost his remembrance for him till he gave up his body. So that way Dhanna Bhagat played a very important role in molding Rama in the childhood. In March 1888, he went to the Mission College in Lahore for the intermediate and degree. But by that time itself he was already married. He was married at a very young age. And after moving to Lahore, he never visits back his village. The main reason for that is he feared he will lack focus. He was too focused on the studies. Even if his friends and other people visit their own native place during the vacation, he would shy away from going because he would think that they are all strong enough, they can control themselves. I am not so. He was such a plain boy with a superstitious belief that he will lose his focus, which he really was. Meaning, he was very focused in his studies. Therefore, he never visits, and he mentions this often in his correspondence to Dhanna Bhagat and his father, that he does not want to lose his focus. Such focus will later on help him to realize his self. So, all the glimpses of the genius that he was to become later is very much evident in his childhood itself. So, in 1893, he stands first in the province and clears his BA examinations. Later, he becomes a mathematics professor. Mathematics was very dear to him. In fact, if there is one terrestrial subject which is close to Vedanta, it is mathematics. Plato, the great philosopher, he wrote outside his chamber, those who don't know mathematics don't enter my chamber. It is not to keep others away, but what he is trying to convey is that a person with a mathematical bent of mind, who can reason, who can be precise in his thinking, alone can venture into the realm of Vedanta. Because, or rather let us put it this way, the more mathematical you are, it is easy to grasp the contents of Vedanta. It is a very precise science. Vedanta is more precise than mathematics. So among the terrestrial subjects, mathematics stands closer to Vedanta, and he loved it. He took tuitions also to other people. Later he became a professor of mathematics. In fact, he released a paper when he was studying itself as to how to approach mathematics. That I would say that all the students should read, because he very clear-cut says what time you should study, what time, what should be your food habits, and many people divorce physical activities away from studies, but you have to take regular exercises and keep your mind and body fresh before you venture into studies also. People think that only outdoor games like cricket or volleyball need physical exercises, but it is as important for a game like chess also. And this you will understand only when you play and understand the chess, maintaining your personality. Vishwanathan Anand says the same thing in his interviews. So he gives a lot of points, and he gives advice to teachers also as to how to impart the knowledge to the students. Therefore, it is a very complete, comprehensive paper which he releases as to how to approach mathematics, which is one of the dreaded subjects in the schools. Many students fear to take up mathematics mostly because it is put in a very terrified form by the teacher themselves. So most of the fault lies with the teachers. So he addresses both the issues. It was very dear to his heart. Mathematics was very dear to his heart. Later on, when he takes up sannyasa, a farewell poem he writes and he says, "Farewell, O mathematics, farewell, O mathematics." It was so dear to him that, like you say tata bye bye to your family, he says goodbye to mathematics. It was so dear to him. Then he took tuitions, and as many people were dependent on him, he was also helped by two gentlemen mainly. Of course, one was his own professor called Professor Gilbertson in the college, and Lala Ayodhya Prasad, who later on got himself associated with the Swami Rama Tirtha Pratishthan. These are people who helped them, and he was very happy to take help from them because his life was to give only. So whoever joined him in giving, he was very happy to take help from them. At this point of time, that is, let us say from 1988 in Lahore till 1888 to 1896-97, when he was in constant correspondence with Dhanna Bhagat and his father through the letters, we see his philosophical bent of mind. And never does he, let us say, demand any money or any of... You cannot see when the people are trying to write his biography later on, they want to know what his personal assets or what he liked, etc. None of them could gather sufficient material from the letters because all were very impersonal. Even in his letters of correspondence, he would only relate how one should be in tune with God and all his philosophical bent of mind. Even if he related some incidents about him, he would say that I bought so many books, these were covered, and I helped, and my student passed the examination. That's a great satisfaction. He would talk about such unselfish action only. There was never anything written personal about himself. This was one of the traits of him. And in 1894, that was the time when Swami Vivekananda had finished his Parliament of Religions address at Chicago, and he had come back to India, and he was thrilling audiences everywhere. One such talk he gave at Lahore, and Swami Rama Tirtha was, of course, thrilled by that talk. He was inspired by the towering personality of Vivekananda himself. More importantly, Swami Vivekananda saw the potential of a great personality in Swami Rama Tirtha. So he said, Tirtha Rama was his name. Tirtha Rama, you are the flag bearer, torch bearer of Vedanta from now on. Carry on, he said. And he was so thrilled about the whole meeting because though for the sake of understanding their mindset and his own views, he would attend other political meetings also where persons like Dadabhai Nauroji came, and Congress people used to make meetings after meetings. That did not impress Tirtha Rama that much, but this meeting of Swami Vivekananda, you can say, thrilled him so much. It was, you can say, it was a turning point in his life also. Everything follows a set pattern or course, but there are certain milestones. One of the milestones was that he met Swami Vivekananda in 1894. That marked a very distinct change in his career. Then in 1896, as a raw 23-year-old, he gives his first lecture in some Hindu Sabha near where he was, near Lahore. And he fearlessly speaks his mind out. Words would come through him like Ganges, and he fearlessly speaks against the orthodoxy of the Hindus themselves. He talks about and his passion for the nation. It is all shown in that speech, but all his speech was completely with full of passion and emotion for his country. He does not speak for the sake of speaking. He speaks for the sake of educating. He speaks for the sake of promulgating the truth. So that to such a person there is no chance of any fear. See, fear comes only when there is a selfish element in it. There was absolutely no selfish element in him. Therefore, he spoke as fearlessly as he could. That was the first lecture in 1896. He also simultaneously released a periodical in Urdu. It was titled as Alif. This Alif also contained all the free-flowing thoughts of Rama. All these writings showed of what is going to come later on. Now all this in a student's life, you must remember, was done under extreme hardship. Many days he would have to skip his meals. With 1 rupee he would spend the whole month. It's truth. He would sometimes buy books with the amount that he has, and he will forego meals. And certain, to show his adamantine will, there were certain mathematical problems which he would take vow upon himself to solve within the night is over. Once he said that I will kill myself if I don't solve the problem, at the break of the dawn he solved the problem. These are the traits that he developed, a sort of a strong adamantine will, which he says later is required to realize the self. Mundaka Upanishad says, Na ayam atma balahinena labhyaha. Na ayam atma balahinena labhyaha means this self is not for one who is weak mentally and physically. Only the strong will can venture into spirituality. It is not an asylum for those who are weak. If you have failed somewhere else, let us try Vedanta. It cannot be so. You listen to Swami Vivekananda, he says the same thing. Weakness means death, strength is life. And at every inch it was shown in Swami Rama Tirtha's life. Each and every inch he shows this. So this adamantine will of a child later on transforms into a very great conviction that he must realize the self. And on the Diwali day in 1897, he totally renounces everything. He goes up high in the Himalayas, where, see, all the great people's life were unidirectional. They will never return back. He left his village and went to Gujranwala, means he never goes back to the village. He comes to Lahore, never goes back. Now he goes to Himalayas, there's no more returning back to where he was before. The same thing, you go through the life of Lord Krishna, it's the same thing. Once he left his flute and gopis in the Vrindavan, there's no turning back. It's only a unidirectional flow. Meaning, you have to live perception by perception. There is no lingering of any of these great sages, and this is very much evident in Swami Rama Tirtha's life. And more so, he was going towards more and more freedom. So nothing can bind him at any stage of life. Neither could his school friends, nor his parents, nor his wife, anything. And he had to be free. His spirit was such that his body had to follow the spirit. His body could not be confined to a small realm. It was just not possible. Many people, those who are ignorant, they make comments not about Swami Rama Tirtha in general, that certain real, I am talking about real sannyasis, because later on Swami Rama Tirtha himself condemns pseudo sannyasis. Real sannyasis, how can they leave their family and go? They have left their duties. It is not so. When the fruit is ripe, it has to fall down. It has to fall down for the good of the fruit and for the good of the tree. Because if it is going to stain the tree, it is going to spoil the whole thing. And the fruit is mature enough, hence only the mature fruit will fall, otherwise it cannot fall. So a person who tries renunciation or sannyasa when he is not ready, it is just not possible. And when the fruit falls, it is good for one and all. Exactly like that. When a person of that caliber goes into a high level of renunciation, he is taken up the whole world as one family. That's all we have to remember. It is not that he has renounced a small family, but taken up a big family. Like that, he renounced in 1897, writes his final letters to his father, and he says, I have not been doing anything for the last 20 days. It has been God who has been doing everything. And he says, we are two true Brahmanas, because his body was born into a Brahmin family. He says, we are true Brahmanas only if we set ourselves in the path of Brahman, which is the real derivation of the word Brahmana. Not merely one who wears the sacred thread and just because he is born to a Brahmin parents. And he says, let us do this. And Father, believe me, the same power which helps me should help you and everyone also. And thus saying, he goes back. Later on, when he gets a letter from Dhanna Bhagat to come back and resume his career as a professor, First thing he tears the letter apart and throws it into Ganges. That was his spirit. Nobody could ever venture to stop him. And then in the deep recesses of forests of Himalayas, he realizes his self. He was one with the self. He was the self. From that time onwards, he was a totally free spirit. He was the self, nothing less of it. And this spirit of self-realization, as much as we see in Swami Rama, we don't really see in anybody else's works or life or anything. He was such an unparalleled person after that. This is the brief life history as such of Swami Rama. Now, he was also a great patriot, a reformer, a visionary, all into one. As you would appreciate, a person who cannot identify himself with the oneness of nation, he just cannot aspire to reach the self. Self is to go beyond universe and merge with the Brahman or God. Now how can a person who is not even identifying himself with the nation do that? It is just not possible. So all his talks, all his appeals were replete with sentiments of patriotism, yet he would not compromise from the standpoint of the self that he has become. When he goes to Japan, he seeks so many scholarships for Indian students. When he goes to America, he gives a lot of appeals on behalf of Indians. He introduces all the Brahma Vidya there, and he tries to bring all the material knowledge that has taken roots in the West to India. Therefore, for him, solving the problems of India was not problem of India alone. For him, it was international problem. And he could view with that objectivity that all were one. In other words, as much as he felt an Indian, he felt an American also. Therefore, when he says about, let us say, population explosion, he says, please don't occupy my mother India so much that she cannot take dead weight as burden. Please go up to places because the trees will grow stronger only if they are too much crowded in the same place, they will not grow healthy. Please go somewhere else. At the same time, don't be a burden to that country, he says, because America and Japan are as dear to him as India. This is his vision, which maximum when a patriot goes, he cannot look beyond the boundary of this country. For him, all the boundaries go away. And he says, the problem of India is an international problem because for the sake of America's well-being, they should help India at this point of time. When a person is sick, when a person is having disease, it is your bounden duty to help. If you allow him to rot, the same disease will catch you sooner or later. So by being aloof and say that he is suffering from his karma, I don't have anything to do with it, you are digging your own grave. So he is cautioning the Americans lovingly that it is their bounden duty to help India at that point of time, because whatever be the reasons, they have fallen into the state of decadency, which he is going to explain later as to what is the cause. Therefore, he was a patriot to the core. Then there were some suggestions as to revive the old Havan worship or what is called as the Yajna. It is called as the Yajna. And he was not against it, but he said, let us do it in a way which is applicable in this point of time. Let us not merely do the Havan worship for the sake of Havan worship. And he traces beautifully all the traditions as to how it started, what was the purpose behind it, and what is the spirit of Yajna that we must follow at this point of time. Let us say at the point of time when there was a lot of forest in India and the population was less, you needed to burn and give carbon dioxide back to the forest. But when there is already so much population, which so much of carbon dioxide forest, which is generating more and more laziness, which was very much evident, there is no need for you to burn so much fire. Instead, why don't you see the fire of those Daridra Narayanas whose fire of digestion has to be kindled? Why don't you oblate the offerings into their mouths? It is a far more superior yajna. Why don't you oblate far more offerings into the fire of the blacksmith and make iron and steel? This was his point. So,
You can do the havan and fire worship, but also make your laboratory as sacred as the fire of yajna. Make your offices and tables, everything as the spirit of yajna. And he quotes, this is not without any precedent. After the Mahabharata times, after the civil war of Mahabharata, when there was a change in the style of Indian structure and society, the same karma kanda of Vedas underwent a drastic change. Before that, yajna was done only on equal terms with gods. Though there was some giving and taking, there was no commercial spirit. Later on, after Mahabharata, it got changed. Now, thousands and thousands of years later, it needs a change now. Why don't we do it? This is how he approaches the subject, and as again, he fearlessly speaks about it. When all the Orthodox Pandits and everybody is gathered, he fearlessly speaks. And I'll just read out one passage. You will understand how he is against just the pure attachment to orthodoxy without understanding the spirit of it. This is given in the place called Pushkar, where Lord Brahma is said to have conducted the yajna. It's a great yajna bhumi. There he says, I quote, "Dear ones, laws and institutions are for man. Man is not for laws and institutions. Some say through bhashya, commentary on religious scriptures. The future is knit firmly with the past." How beautifully put, and what a plausible idea. But have we not already too many patches and stitches added on to the old garments? Truth need not compromise. Let the whole world turn round sun, and sun need not revolve round the world. Could the discoveries of science be tacked on the dogmas of the Christian Bible or other religious works as bhashya or commentaries with the view of knitting well the past with the future? The original sacred text coming from God should be allowed to speak for themselves. God surely has gentlemanliness enough not to equivocate and to keep the world waiting thousands of years, tossing and tumbling from one error to another before his meaning is revealed by a commentator on self-chosen apostle posing with the impartiality of a judge and practicing the sinister craft of a lawyer. Can authority establish truth? Does the sun require a little lamp to be made visible? Does a simple mathematical truth gain a bit more weight if Christ, Muhammad, Buddha, Zoroaster, Vedas and all come and bear a testimony to it? Chemical truths, we know them directly through experiments. It is the sinful crushing of the intellect to stuff the brain by belief in them. Confound not the truth, which is defined as the same yesterday, today and forever with particular occurrence. Truth is to be known in itself, whereas any incident we may believe on authority. Does Vedanta stand in need of even a proof and argumentation? Why? Mere enunciation of it in proper form is proof incontrovertible. Beauty requires no outside recommendations to prove attractive. And this he speaks with so much passion. This is one of the lectures, when we read even now, 100 years later, it should bring real tears in our eyes. So emotionally he speaks for the love of his motherland, spirit of yajna, to awake the Indians. So he was a patriot to the core. He is against all the caste system. He wants to break I am not saying in what way but what he is trying to say is, these caste systems should not become an obstacle for our hearts to mingle. That he was opposing. He is against the caste system. He counts up to, from the statistics, 52,000 sannyasis at that point of time who had taken up author robes, and he is saying they should sacrifice themselves as manus in the garden of India. Instead, more of them have become honorable beggars, and they have become a burden on the country. And again, this is not without precedent. Adi Shankaracharya, the greatest of all sannyasis, he says, who institutionalized sannyasa also, even his own time, there were people who took up to author robes for what? For only to make their living. He says, Jatilo Mundi Lunchita Keshaha Kashayambara Bahukruta Veshaha Pashyan Napichana Pashyati Modu Udara Nittam Bahukruta Veshaha. Why do some people pull their hair one by one? Some people shave their heads off. they put on the kashaya, that means upper robes. Why do they do all these things? They are doing it for the belly's sake. Pashyan napichana pashyati muda. They have a chance to see the truth, yet they are not seeing the truth. Fools, he says, fools. So, it is the same thing that he condemns here. So, he says, all of us should become, therefore, what he calls for is a sannyasi with a Shudra spirit. Let us all put our hands together and work for India. Let the sannyasi be an example for everyone. This is what he says. Let him be an example for everyone with the spirit or the head aiming towards Brahman. Let the feet be planted firmly on the ground. Let us do work together, he says. He is talking about, and he was very much interested in the upliftment of women. He said women and the Shudras, they form the very roots of the society. Now, if you want to nourish the tree and show it beautifully outside, how can you do that without nourishing the roots? They are the roots of the society. Even now, in a family, if the father goes astray, the family has chance to come up. But if the mother goes out of the way, it is very difficult. That is the power of the woman. So, he says you cannot suppress the spirit of the woman, and in the name of child marriage and other things, you cannot deny her education, which is very much required. In the, again, going back a few centuries in Adi Shankaracharya's time, when he goes near Bihar to find out the house of one Mandana Mishra, who later on becomes the disciple, he asks few ladies as to where his house is, and they give an exquisite poetry as an answer. This is only a proof that there was never a time when the women's education was not prevalent in this country. Later on, due to some social changes maybe, and some false administration, this was denied, maybe due to Mughal invasion, we do not know. But he asked to revive all those things as early as by the end of 19th century. Then he also says the science and technology must improve in India. Because for us, we know that patriotism is not merely bragging about one's past. What is the use? When somebody flies in aeroplane, we say, oh, we had Pushpak Vimana in the times of Lord Rama. If somebody does anything, oh, Jnana Drishti we had, that must be television in the times of Mahabharata. If you had all this knowledge, who asked you not to produce the television? If you had all the knowledge, why should you wait till Wright brothers had to invent the aeroplane? So there is no point merely bragging about one's past. This is not patriotism. You have to accept the ideas wherever they are wholeheartedly. This is the call of Vedas. Let noble thoughts come to us from all sides, says Vedas. So why should you not accept a fact? Because any fact in itself is a representation of truth, whether it comes from east or west. So he says, why not accept that? He was very much in favor of learning the science and arts side by side the spiritual studies also. So secular studies, science, arts, along with spiritual study was his call. And because India should never, he says, there is what is known as this national Swadharma. Just as each individual and caste and community has its own dharma, India as a nation has also got a Swadharma, which is spirituality. At least not for the sake of ourselves, for the sake of the whole world, we have to maintain this knowledge. Wherever there is a lack of values, even now they look up to the East, particularly this land, for solace, for knowledge, for understanding, for their growth. But unfortunately, if we leave it, we are doing wrong to us and to the whole world. So he says, never leave your Swadharma. But along Swadharma, please learn this also. Please learn the steam engines and telegraphs, which were all prevalent by that time. So his call was for both secular and sacred study. And in terms of reforming, he was only for individual reformation. Because he declined, and when he was in Tehri, Maharaja of Kishangarh or Prime Minister, whoever it was, he gave a huge sum of money, unimaginable sum of money at that time, something to the tune of 2 lakhs or something in 1902, to start an institution. And Rama Tirtha declined it, saying all institutes are my institutes. The moment we start one particular institution and we confine, invariably we confine to a small wall, not wanting to grow out of it, which he was totally against. So he said, all institutes are my institutes, let them promulgate. I am there working through everyone. This was his point. He declined to start any institute, and his vision was beyond comparison. In 1902, what could be the whole population of all Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, all put together in the subcontinent should be less than 20 crores or something. Very much less than that. And it is nothing compared to what it is now. Yet he warns about population explosion at that point of time. You will compare this with even after independence, the first Prime Minister could not gather this thought. And we know how much a country can suffer by population explosion. We all know cow is a very meek and mild animal, very sacrificial, very gentle. But if there is going to be enough food only for 20 cows and you have 100 cows in your shed, even those gentle creatures will turn very wild. Because this is the law where you don't have enough to feed, and there's going to be strife and struggle. It will result in malnutrition, hosts of other problems. This he was able to see as early as in 1902, where there was no clue for any other person. Meaning, the whole idea, as per the Manusmriti of any average Indian, is to make as much children as possible, produce as many children as possible, because what? You will gain Swarga. This is their concept. He says, you may or may not get Swarga later. Why are you making a hell here now? Why do you want to make a hell here now and wait for Swarga later on? So what he was talking on very, very practical terms, for which he quotes even Yoga Vasishta, which according to him was the greatest book where nobody can escape self-realization when you read Yoga Vasishta, where Sage Vasishta is advising Rama. He says, you will be a king, and the primary duty of a king is to check the population of his country. We can be proud of what our forefathers taught. We don't know how many thousands of years back. He says, Rama, be careful about the population of your country. If you fail to check in, the nature has to balance itself. And to balance itself, it will introduce famine, it will introduce flood, it will introduce tsunami. So these are not without causes. There is a stern law of cause and effect that is functioning. The same warning he gives in the beginning of 1900s. And by that time, in the West, of course, there was about 50 years or so, whatever be the time, newspaper industry had well established. And even in India, we know that Statesman was started in 1878, Hindu was started, many leading, which was, in fact, you will appreciate in those days, some of the newspapers even started to give positive thoughts about freedom struggle and other things. Even then, Swami Rama Tirtha understood this is not going to be a good trend at all. He warns about people getting indulged in newspapers, which is the bane now. Of course, now television has taken over it and added to it, but let us say, most of the times he says it is an extension of gossips that spoils one's mind. First thing in the morning when you get up, you want to read newspapers which mostly carry negative reports. I'm not saying they should not give facts, but it is put in such a way and which is sensationalized beyond a point, which spoils one's mind. We do a double fault. What Shastra says, first thing in the morning is that we must absorb the spiritual thoughts, because you have to refresh your mind and intellect on a daily basis. Just as you sweep and broom the houses daily to keep it free of dirt, because as you broom, the dirt will come in. Exactly like that, the mind and intellect keeps on accumulating dirt on a continual basis. Therefore, we have to keep it clean, and the best way is to utilize the early mornings in study of the Shastras. This is recommended and it is very scientific. We do not do that. Plus, we spoil the mind particularly by newspapers. I'm not saying you should not read. A man of purpose spends not more than 5-10 minutes in newspapers because he has other things to attend in the day. It is very true. This he wants when newspapers were not so much bad. those days. I'm talking about in 1900. This is called a missionary. So Swami Rama was a patriot, he was a reformer, and he was a visionary. What is the speciality of Swami Rama? All self-realized sages are intrinsically the same. Yet, why do we say he is a towering personality? Why do we say he is the best? What are the unique points about Swami Rama? First is everything, whatever he did or spoke or wrote, there was an uncompromising standpoint of self-realization which was prevalent. Nothing short of that he would speak or write. He would not compromise the stance of self-realization. So much so he was established in that he used to refer the body and the personality contained in the body as Rama. Throughout his books, you can see there are 7 volumes which contains Swami Rama Tirtha. He never wrote a book. All his speeches are recorded in this book. Wherever he spoke, whatever he spoke, he will only say Rama speaks, Rama loves, Rama does, as though he is referring to a third person. He will never use the word I, first person singular pronoun I to mean his body. Never at all. Maybe in his Purvashama days when he wrote letters, that time he could have done that. But after this point of realization, wherever he uses, very few instances he uses I only to mean the self. One such place is in America where he says, I taught in the Vedas. I taught in the Vedas. I taught in Kurukshetra. I taught in Jerusalem. I taught in Arabia. And I am teaching you now. And whenever there is a voice required to bring in the truth, I will manifest myself again and again. This is how he uses the word I. So, anybody who comes in contact with the speeches cannot but you cannot have even an iota of doubt about the standpoint from which he speaks, which is uncompromising. Therefore, it's a proof that the state of self-realization was so permanent, and Swami Rama Tirtha undoubtedly was a person who nobody could dispute, was established in that state throughout, uncompromisingly. And it is very interesting, wherever he addresses the audience, Swami Rama Tirtha would say, my own self in the form of ladies and gentlemen. Whenever he spoke about, let us say, idealism and realism, he would start like, the only ideal and real one in the form of ladies and gentlemen. When he spoke about Maya, he will say, the one and only ruler, governor, controller of the Maya, the self, in the form of ladies and gentlemen. And it is not mere words. What he felt inside, he spoke. When he talks about infinite, he say one infinite self, all of you, in the form of ladies and gentlemen. And once he was lecturing on a Christmas Eve, and he said, every night is a Christmas night, and every day is a New Year's Day. And there was a thunderous applause. And he was very, he would genuinely call himself as Emperor Rama. In fact, once it happened that when he was coming back from America in Port Said near Egypt, he was supposed to board a ship. He was told that Lord Curzon is also coming to India in the same ship. Lord Curzon, who was to take over the empire of British in India. He says, and he did not also travel in that ship. He said, there cannot be 2 emperors in the same ship. I'll take the next. And he took the next. He never compromised, and he genuinely felt so. When somebody asks, are you a prophet or an apostle? He says, both are below my dignity. I am God. I am God. And he never compromised. This is why I say he came as a lightning and nobody understood him. Because you need to be somewhere near him to understand. Otherwise, just as the Shastras say, a self-realized person is like a madman, unmatavat. You will, because he belongs to a different realm, we cannot relate with him. We put him in a different thing. And all the great people were not understood in their own times because people in general could not relate with them. And this is the stance he took. He says, if you call me a prophet, you are asking me to speak below my dignity. I am God, he says. And this is the stance that he always took. And sometimes during his talk also, he goes to a completely different realm altogether. As he is lecturing, he will close his eyes and tears will fall from his ears, and he will go to a different realm, lost in the God consciousness for minutes together. And then when he regains, he will continue from where he left. Nobody could understand what he is up to or where he is going. But he will generally go into that mood. It was out of his control because he belonged to that realm. It is like a waker addressing the speaker. That's why at the end of the talk, when I am going to suggest this book, I strongly recommend that only people who are used to Vedanta must read this, because it takes us to a different realm altogether, which is very evident in each and every letter of this book. He goes into a different realm altogether, and each and every concept was again explained from the standpoint of self only, like immortality of the self. Why does everybody think that he is going to live forever? We never think of death. Why? Because your Atma is immortal. Everybody thinks he is pure. Everybody thinks he is above all sins. Even when a sinner goes to the church and confesses to the Father there, he comes out and you call him a sinner, he will fight with you. Because in the heart of hearts, he thinks he is pure. Why? Because your Atma is pure. Why is that the body never moves? Even if you want to do something, there is an inherent laziness in the body. Because he says, this inherits the quality of Atma which does not move. Atma is all pervading. So each and every concept, not only this, he talks about socialism, he talks about hypnotism. There is no subject that he has not touched, but everything he explains only from the standpoint of self, never compromising, never takes one step below that. And he really felt one with the universe. That is very important. He would consider himself the Virat Purusha. No, he would not consider. He was a Virat Purusha. And he writes poetry that my eyes are the sun and the moon. My prana is the Vayu. The rivers and oceans are the blood. And the hair that grows on my body is the vegetation. Like that, he literally felt one with the entire universe, one with all the religions. He was you can say a true Muslim. He was a true Christian. He was a true Hindu. He felt one with all the religions. He felt one with all the nations, including India. He felt one with all the universe, all the religions, all the nations. Not only that, he felt one with each and every aspect of the nature. Each and every animal and plant he would consider himself. When he was lying on a hammock, somebody gave him, when he was in Shasta Springs in USA, he immediately ties it between two trees and he is relaxing. And then when he goes somewhere and comes back, he writes, he used to write something for himself to letters. He says, when I am away, this robin is looking with jealousy. Why is this Rama more free than me? Robin is a bird. He says, but can this bird be more jealous of Rama? It cannot be. Because the bird and me are one. You can be jealous or you can have only one emotion. If you consider somebody different than you, there was no difference. So he felt one with each and every bird, insect and animal. And truly speaking, he spent a lot of months in Himalayan caves where nobody would dare to go. All alone, he spent many months together. He was only in the company of wild animals. And he would say fearlessly, look into the eyes of the animals and they will go away. If tiger or anything confronts you, look into the animal, they are afraid of you. Why are you afraid? He was so one with all the nature and all the people. There was absolutely no way that you will see all these traits in any other person as much as you see in him. But I again emphasize, any self-realization intrinsically is one and the same. But there are some in whom the glow is much more larger. It is a flash. Gat gat mera saiya, suna gat nahi koi, balihari wa gatiki, jagat paragat koi says kabe. There are some who shine, in whom the Lord expresses himself as the highest. It is not that others are less privileged or anything. That's why we say intrinsically all are one and the same. Yet some are very bright, and undoubtedly Swami Rama was one with them. And another speciality in Rama is that he appreciates the finer or the subtle points of each and every being. The great beings, the great authors, the great people of the world, be it Adi Shankaracharya, Jesus Christ, Prophet Muhammad, the great Buddha, Zoroaster, and Western philosophers, because he was not introduced to orthodox Hindu teachings and Vedas in his early childhood, because he studied in English school also. He was inclined towards more Western philosophy. He learnt Berkeley, Plato, Kant, Schopenhauer, you name any person. Everybody was in his fingertips. Now, he would appreciate their finer and subtler points because he only knows where their speciality is. As I said, one Milton can only understand another Milton. He was able to intrinsically understand each and every person. When Shelley writes a poem about the loss of the great poet Keats, he writes a poem called Adonis. So, Shelley understands the loss of Keats to the whole English literary world. None of us may understand as deep as Shelley because they are of the same frequency. Maybe we will stand in 1 minute silence, that's all we know. But he weeps for Adonis. That is so you in fact, to understand whether Tendulkar is a great batsman or Lara is a great batsman, you must know the finer points of cricket. Now, Swami Rama Tirtha was able to do that with each and every person, not only in spiritual realm, as I quoted now, but even in Isaac Newton, Euclid. He points out where certain things of Newton will not stand to time later on, which is all later proved. So even in science or maths or in spirituality for that matter, he appreciates the finer points, which is the best of that personality. Having done that, he also points out their shortcomings. He says, why did Adi Shankaracharya hide his light behind the bushel? What was a matter of fact for him? Why should he hide behind and quote the scriptures often? That was not required at all. And he's talking about the Islamic invasion, outspoken to the Muslims. He is speaking because Muslims come and seek knowledge from him. It is not that he is going on spreading all these things. And he is outspoken. He says, I tell this because I love you all. I am in heart of heart Muslim also. Therefore, he says how the invasion and their brutal attack changed the demography, changed certain habits in India. So he is very much he is outspoken against the medieval church, which suppressed the free thinking. Galileo, before he was reprimanded by the church and after he was reprimanded, was two different personalities. He says that is because of the intervention of the church. He was much against it, and all the inventions and all the growth of the West was despite all these things, so he appreciates them. Therefore, he points out the shortcomings. He is not afraid to say, and very lovingly, like he had a boyish smile always, everywhere. Whoever came in contact with him was enraptured by his childish innocence and boyish smile. He won over every person. So he says, if you don't agree with Rama, go and try to file a case against Rama in the court of law. But before you go and do that, Rama's words will change your heart, which is true. You can never do anything against Rama, he says with authority. So therefore, with such love and affection, but where truth need to be spoken, he spoke. There was no coming back. Then he ventured into certain realms where nobody would venture to go, because nobody else did not know how to go. As simple as that. Only he knew those realms. It was a matter of fact for him. I'll give you just one example. If there are any Muslims here or those who know Quran, they will know that the start of the Quran is that there are 3 letters, which is in Arabic Alif, Lam and Mim. In English, when translated, it is A-L-M. When the elite Muslims of Lucknow come and say Avaz to him and start the conversation, he starts his conversation by chanting Om, Om, he says. Then the Muslims, they are not offended, but they are asking Swamiji, when we say Ahmad, why don't you reply with the same Islamic confrontation? Why do you say Om? He says, I am saying Om because your Quran says this. What? They are confounded. How do you say Quran says Om? He says, how does your Quran start? They say A-L-M. What is A-L-M? We don't know. It's kept as secret. You ask them. You ask any Muslim, it is genuinely kept as a secret. That's what they believe. Throughout the world, it is believed to be kept as a secret. Even the explanation of Quran starts from the next verse only. You can see the authentic version of Quran released by the Mosque of Saudi Arabia. And then he says, A-L-M is only Om because in Sanskrit we say A plus U plus M. And how does he prove? He proves by only bringing in Arabic grammar. He says in Arabic grammar, if there is a consonant which is preceded by a vowel and which is succeeded by a consonant, L is a consonant which is preceded by A and which is succeeded by M, then the sound of L becomes O. For example, if you want to write the Muslim word Samshuddin, we say Samshuddin or Jalaluddin, but when they write, you will see that S-A-M, S-H-L-D-I-N. This is how they write. It should not be pronounced as Samshuddin. It is Samshuddin. So, this L becomes O in the pronunciation. Jalaluddin or Samshuddin. So, he brings in Arabic grammar to prove his point. And this was a matter of fact for him. Now, we must be thrilled at this because now it becomes easy for him. But the point is, how did he know? He knew it. It was a matter of fact for him. And next thing is about Virgin Mary. What is that immaculate conception of Christ? Which I will not say now, you will have to read it to find it. Only the great Ram Tirtha can explain all these things. Which was a matter of fact for him. This is the point. Everything he knew. There was no question of trying to derive at anything. It just came through him. It just came through him. And he also points out how he was very much not for the theoretical enunciation of Vedanta, he was very much for the practical Vedanta. That means you have to live Vedanta. There is no point, all of India we know Vedanta, we talk Vedanta, but we never practice it. And he says the success of the West, even material success of the West, is because one Christian asks, you are coming and telling us Vedanta, etc. Don't you see all the development has taken place only in the world of church? And you Indians, you are not even taking care of yourself materially. How dare you come and teach us? Very lovingly he says, sit down. All your prosperity is not because of church. That's when he quotes all the medieval, all the thinkers who were reprimanded by the church. All the developments have taken place in spite of church, not because of church. In spite of church, you have progressed. And it is the spirit of practical Vedanta that has led to revival of the great America, the great Japan. He says, I don't want to lecture to Japanese people because they are already living it. They are happy. They are hardworking. This is practical Vedanta. And why has India fallen down? Not because of Vedanta. India has fallen down because we lack practical Vedanta. He says, you read the memoirs and written messages of all the visitors who visited India during Greek time, during Chinese time, all of them write so highly of India because of its material prosperity. This is even written by a Western author, I forgot his name, in the book Rise and Fall of Superpowers. India was a superpower. Even after British Empire got established here, we were having 25% of the world trade. This is an established fact. Nobody can dispute this. Why all this was happening? Because there was practical Vedanta among the masses. When some ignorant fellow out of innocence, out of ignorance, they kept the knowledge away from the masses, and practical Vedanta, which is renunciation in action, was absent, we fell down. Lord Macaulay, the father of modern education in India, wrote or rather talked to British Parliament in 1835 that I travelled the length and breadth of this country and you cannot find one beggar in this country, which is true. You cannot find one beggar in this country. If we want to make India if we want to make Britain a truly dominating nation over India, we have to break the backbone of India, which is Vedanta, which is practical Vedanta. So they made it a point to make us believe that whatever we practice is below our dignity, it is something very uncivilized, and then whatever English, whatever is imported from the West is something very good. This is the recorded statements of even the Westerners. So he quotes right from the days of Pahin and Greek till the latest, and he says, this is the lack of practical Vedanta which has caused the downfall. So in each and everything, he puts the intrinsic cause in it. So he says, wherever there is practical Vedanta, whether it be India or abroad, there will be shine. Where there is lack of practical Vedanta, you will have to blame yourself. There is no other remedy for it. It is something like this. He gives an example that there is sunlight shining in your house, and you say, now this is my sunlight. I want to have it only for myself. What do? To confine the sunlight only to yourself, you draw all the curtains. Now, how ignorant an idea is that sun will not wait, sun will go on. Wherever there is an opening, it will venture and bless that house. Exactly like that, God is not respecter of any personalities. Wherever there is values, wherever there is any opening for Him to shine, He will shine, whether it is India or Egypt or America or Persia or Japan or Australia, wherever it is. He is no respecter of personalities. Now you wanted to confine and withhold and kept the knowledge to yourself, you will suffer later. Therefore he says, at different points of time, whenever there is a rise and fall of an empire, you can see that at that point of time, all the philosophical, spiritual traditions would be of high order in that country. Whether when Europe dominated the world, when Persia dominated the world, when Egypt dominated the world, or America, or India also. Whenever spirituality is that high, material success is a byproduct that easily follows. And he says, there will be a revolution again, the sun will again shine on India. It has to come through a circle, isn't it? If from here it went to Afghanistan, to Persia, to Egypt, to England, to America, to Japan, again it has to come back here. This is a cycle. Very beautifully he says. Therefore, intrinsically we have to understand it is practical Vedanta that is going to help us. Not theoretical talking and just mere proof discussion without implementing in our day-to-day life. And then, whatever he spoke, whichever he spoke, even practical tips, which we will see a little later, he spoke from his direct experience. Never his leaning was never on scriptures, Vedas say this or the Karma say this. He was only talking from his own personal experience, because there is no more pramana that is required except for your personal experience. This is what he, and therefore, according to our Swami, that is Swami Parthasarthi, he outweighs all the Swamis put together. It's because our Swamiji also, who follows Vedanta to the core, is not very much a promulgator of any personality. But when it comes to Swami Rama Tirtha, he says, you place all the Swamis in one balance and you place Swami Rama Tirtha in the other, this will definitely go down. And it is not only all the spiritual level, even at the physical level, he showed the conviction of a soldier. In America, he just ran a race and came first in mountain climbing. He was not a very strong personality in his childhood. Later on, he took special efforts to build his body, and he is a charming personality. You can just look at the picture here. Wherever he went, he was so playful, so cheerful, so charming that he attracted everyone, even physically. When he comes to Himalayas, with only a cowpea, not even having any other dress, he climbed mountain after mountain, peaks after peaks he conquered. He would run ahead of the trained mountaineers. It's a fact. And such a strong will, because he wanted to be he was the top, he was the peak himself. The spirit in him soared like that. He could swim in the currents of Ganga. All this is his play. It was just a game for him. And he says always the speciality of mantra, Om. He says whenever you get time, chant Om, you are not losing anything. And he says even a mute, a person who is dumb, he produces the sound of Om. He says, the child, when it can't say anything, it says Om. A sick man, why does he, when you are too sick, too tired, you cannot say anything. What sound comes out of you is Om. Your breath is, he says it's so hum. So hum means that I am. Saha I am. He am I. So he infuses as though in a practical way everything. And so he says, Om is something that Hindus took up and used. It is not a Hindu mantra. Please understand, Om is a natural symbol of God. As he said, if you blow the conch, which is very much prevalent in Bengal, what sound comes out of it is Om. So it is a very natural sound. And you can take it up and use it just as Hindus did. You can do it for your own good. Not only that, all other religions also use this in some form or other. The Muslims say Ameen. The Christians say Amen. All these are modifications of Om. In English, the three powerful words that represent God are omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. All these are Om. All are modifications of Om. So there is enough proof to say that Om is just a natural sound of God. Why don't you take it up and use it? It's free of cost and it's available to you. Don't condemn it as a Hindu mantra or anything. He says there is a clarion call. Clarion call, like a newspaper advertisement he gives. Wanted. What is wanted? Reformers. Not of others, but of themselves. Who have won not university distinctions, but victory over the local self. Age, the youth of divine joy. Salary, Godhead. Apply sharp, with no begging solicitations, but commanding decision to the director of the universe, your own self. This is his clarion call. And he gives this in every of the lectures. Since we don't have much time, I will touch upon very few concepts which he explained in his own beautiful way. There is no comparison really. Because all the terse concepts of Vedanta people run away from this country because it is seen as a very abstract subject. But he made it so simple, taking up examples from practical mathematics and chemistry and the things around us, that he made it so simple. It is unbelievably simple that he made that it, with little bit of application, all the concepts become clear, and such a theoretical enunciation is required because only a strong theory later on converts into practical action. So all his concepts were so easy like that. One of the things is what your God has, the great statement. If you understand that one statement, it is enough for life, really. The way to gain anything is to lose it. What a statement. He is talking about practical renunciation in action. It is true at all the levels it can be proved that in terms of acquisition, let us assume, if you are wanting to even acquire a material object, you keep on thinking about it. That means you keep on desiring, you keep on craving. That means it is directly hampering your action. See, what brings the desired object is the action. It is the action that brings success in any form. That is the cause and effect. By thinking more and more about the result of the action, you are not concentrating on the action properly. Therefore, only when you drop that, you will get this. The way to gain anything is to lose it. In terms of enjoyment, you will have to have the detachment. Like when you see a horror movie, you are away from it, therefore you are enjoying it. You are eating a chocolate only when you detach from it and not get involved and crush it in 1 minute. Then only you enjoy the object. Relationship. Any relationship where there is attachment, it is going to be a disaster. This he makes it very clear in his American lecture. He says, don't listen listlessly. To the audience he says, don't listen listlessly. Let this knowledge sink deep into your heart, because this is an irrefragable law. A law means you cannot change it, I cannot change it. Let it sink deep into your hearts that any man who attaches himself with any object or being is bound to suffer. He is bound to suffer. Stronger the attachment, greater the suffering. It could be an inanimate object, it could be a being, it could be any relationship, father, mother, guru, wife, anything for that matter. And the point is, why is this happening? Because when you are attached, you are binding yourself with another object which is having a free movement. Everything is independent. independent in this world, having its own movement. Earth has its own movement, moon has its own movement. You cannot tie Earth and moon and make a best friendship out of them. Because Earth's movement is different, moon's movement is different. Jupiter's movement is different. All are harmoniously working because they maintain a distance. This is the law of attachment and detachment. This we are able to see physically outside, but we are not able to see it mentally inside. That's why we need explanations from Swami Rama Tirtha on this. And the more you tie or bond with your let it be your son, and the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, it is the Atma that is going to detach you from everything. Unnecessarily, if you keep a reality in the world and get attached to it, you are going to suffer for it. You will be duped by the same thing. A person who thinks his sun is real and gets attached to the sun, he will be cheated by the sun. A person who thinks the wife is real and gets attached to the wife will be duped by that wife. So therefore, what is the practical advice here? You have to see everything as a representation of the self. Nothing short of it. And that is more easier, then you will have a harmonious relationship of universal love. There is no preferential attachment here. Therefore, the way to gain anything is to lose it. So each and everything it can be proved that it is the detachment that is giving us the pleasure in this world and not really the attachment. Iron and gold are good for buying iron and gold, he says. It's in this pamphlet that you are given, there are some of the quotes given. They are obviously not exhaustive because whenever he spoke out, some quote came out of him. When shall I be free? An American asked. When that I ceases to be. When shall I be free? When that I ceases to be. So iron and gold are good for buying iron and gold means the happiness that you are seeking by procurement of iron and gold, no, they can only produce iron and gold. Happiness is of a different kind. Even knowledge, even emotion cannot be bought by money. Money can get money or equivalent of money, sense objects maximum. You cannot get any happiness out of it. Then he says, when an American asks him, I am so tensed, I am so overworked, I want rest. What is rest? He immediately shoots back. Intense work is rest. We all think going away from work is rest. No. Intense work is rest. The law of life is that the body should be at constant motion while the mind should be at rest. So if you want real rest, act constantly without any punctuation. This you have to only experience and see. There is no other way. Intense work is rest. And we are all trying rest in all other ways. We try meditation, we try deep breathing. All those things cannot bring rest. Rest or relaxation for the mind comes from intense work where you dissolve your ego and work. That is real rest. That is real relaxation. Then he is talking about a beautiful example of the Himalayas. He sees the glaciers. He sees the glaciers that are there. Because most of the times it's in the Himalayas. After his trip from America and Japan and Egypt, then he goes to Himalayas. He hardly comes down later on. Most of the times in Himalayas, and he sees beautiful glaciers there. This glacier does not reflect the sun. The same glacier later on gets converted into small rivers. And that river beautifully meanders in the Himalayas. Later the same river goes to the plains and becomes a very huge water body till it reaches the ocean. He says, exactly like this, the Karana Sharira or the causal body in you is like the glacier. The glacier does not reflect the sun. Similarly, the Vasanas or the ignorance of the self or the Karana Sharira, the seed body in you does not reflect the Atma. That is why in deep sleep there is no consciousness. Consciousness and deep sleeper that you are disjoint. Then, what makes the glacier melt into a river? It is the heat of the sun. Similarly, it is the heat of the Atma that makes the Karana Sharira go into the Sukshma Sharira, which is subtle body. Subtle body is our mind. The mind comes from the unmanifest Vasanas. How does the unmanifest Vasana manifest first itself as mind? It is due to the heat of the Atma. And in the river you can see the reflection of sun. In the glacier you cannot see the reflection of sun, but in the river you can see the reflection of sun. Just as when the mind is present, the Atma reflects itself. Then what is the gross body? When the same river enters into plains, it puts on a garb, it puts an overcoat upon itself, and that becomes the gross body. So, the dream body and the waking body, which is subtle and gross body, are different only in degree, not in kind. Both of them reflect Atma. When the mind puts on another coat, that's what Gita says, this body is another garment. It is a cloth that the subtle body wears, and that it wears, it becomes a gross body. In such simple terms, he explains very terse concepts, because this is the concept of the Upanishad, nothing short of it. And this he explains with a very simple example of the glaciers, the rivulets, and the river and the plains. Then, one of the unique examples that he brings about is in America, where he talks about the life after self-realization. We all know that all of us are different because our vasanas are different, our desires are different. Self-realization is a state where all the desires are vanished. You have practically nothing with respect to your desires. At that point of time, all of them must be same. Yet apparently we see lot of differences. Isn't it? You see Swami Rama Tirtha in extreme silence. He will not even talk a word. You see Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he talks to a few who come to him. Then you see Rama Tirtha himself electrifying his lectures all over the world. Why are there Saint Tyagaraja, he sang and sang and sang? Why are there so many different manifestations when essentially all have reached the same point? Yes, intrinsically they are the same. But how do you explain the so different behavior at the external level? He says, there is a pulley, and on the pulley you pass a fine thread, and on the thread, in one side you place 10 kilograms of weight, in another you keep 10 kilograms of weight, but as 4 and 6, 2 blocks of 4 and 6. You remove 4 now. When you remove 4, there is an imbalance. This imbalance causes the pulley to move downwards on the left side, because 10 will pull it down. Now, after 1 second, you add this weight back. When you add this weight back, the weights are balanced now. The layman thinks that it will come to rest. But science says it will not come to rest. Because after 1 second, the pulley would have gained a velocity of 8 feet per second. That 8 feet per second will continue. It will continue to move in the same direction, but there will be no further acceleration. It is a very tough concept. Please, there's no time, that's why I'm rushing through. After the point of balancing, there will not be any further addition to the originally acquired speed of 8 feet per second. But that same 8 feet per second will continue, and this will continue to come down. If you place the weight after 2 seconds, the speed will be 16. If you place the weight after 3 seconds, the speed will be 24. After 24, there will be no acceleration, but the 24 will be maintained. Now, you translate this into practical life. Why is this imbalance? Why are we going here and there? Because our desires and our supplies is not balanced. Therefore, we start moving here and there. What is balancing? Balancing is exhaustion of all the desires, and we reach the point of self-realization. So, at the point of self-realization, your life is balanced. But there is what is known as the original acquired velocity. The original acquired velocity for Ramana Maharshi is different. The original acquired velocity for Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is different. The original acquired velocity for Rama Tirtha is different. For Saint Tyagaraja is different. Therefore, this original acquired velocity where you don't have any control will continue. But there is no further addition or deletion from that velocity. This he beautifully explains with the pulley example. That explains why all the persons manifest differently, though their intrinsic being is the self. Like that, there are millions and millions. And the last but not the least, I am not going to explain that because you will have to read that and enjoy it. The weakest point according to the critics of Vedanta is Maya. Nobody understands Maya, and they say, if you can't explain anything, you say it's Maya, and get away. And this Maya, he explains in terms of intrinsic and extrinsic illusion, which you will not find even in Vedas. Let me tell you, you will not find it explicitly stated even in Vedas. He explains it so lucidly with a simple example of rope and snake. This rope and snake example everybody knows. He uses that example to explain intrinsic and extrinsic illusion, and before that he says Rama is going to explain illusion as explained by the Hindu scriptures. That means There is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is Savikalpa Samadhi, all those things he has derived. He has the extreme humility not to arrogate to himself. I am not taking up that subject because it is a very tough subject. After long preparation you have to understand Maya, but let it be enough if I say that nobody has explained Maya in such lucid terms, which is considered the weak point of Vedanta. In fact, when he explains and finishes up, it explains the whole philosophy of Vedanta. So these are some of the concepts which are very unique to Swami Rama Tirtha, which honestly he does not arrogate himself. That's why in the beginning I said it is the Guru Parampara, and just as a matter of fact, he continues in that Parampara holding the torch. Lastly, in terms of usefulness, Swami Rama Tirtha always talks about practical Vedanta. He says knowing and realizing in direct experience is the true knowledge. Mere theoretical enunciation will not suffice. He bids us to use our own intellect, see it working in your day-to-day life. Like chemistry, a true chemistry student will go and perform experiments in the lab. You take up some idea, you try and experiment in your own life, then it becomes your own. Don't do it only because the Guru says or the book says. Use your intellect, he says always. For him, Vedanta was not merely about ancient textbooks. He says it is found everywhere. Vedanta brings you a religion which is found in the streets, which is written upon the leaves, which is murmured in the brooks, which is whispered in the winds, which is throbbing in your veins and arteries. A religion that concerns your business and bosom. A religion you have not to practice by going to a particular mosque or a church or a temple. A religion which you have to practice and live in your everyday life, in your hearth, in your dining room, everywhere you will have to live that religion. You will have to study Vedanta at Bayonet's point, he says. Bayonet's point means you will be forced to study. And he says this Vedanta is the rod of Moses. Rod of Moses means he had a magical word which will give whatever he wants. What is that magical word? It's practical Vedanta, which is renunciation in action. He says, this is like a Kohinoor diamond I am giving it to you. You may throw the diamond into the ditch, into the gutter, or you can take the diamond and place it on your forehead. To Rama it makes no difference. To the diamond it makes no difference. That is the point. If you take up Vedanta, is it going to add any more weightage to Vedanta? Vedanta stands on its own authority. That's what he says. So if you use Vedanta, it's good for you, not for Vedanta. Therefore, it is the Vedanta that protects us all. So better use it practically, he says. And he says the only duty you have in this world is to remain cheerful. This is practical Vedanta. If you are morose, if you are sick, quarantine yourself. Don't come out. You will spread the germs around, physically and mentally. So your only duty in the world is to remain cheerful. It will not come by merely laughing, as they do in some laughing club. It will come only when you are really cheerful from inside, which is a product of unselfishness. Then he says, give your personality a real lift, then you can lift the whole world. Therefore, the emphasis is merely upon self-development. And let not your work be directed towards attainment of happiness. Let every work be a product of inspiration and happiness. Meaning you keep your happiness gurgling inside, the work will automatically flow out of you. So let not the work be vainly directed at merely procuring happiness, which will again go like shadow you will have to chase. But let all the work come out of inspiration. And this he does in America also. When he is in Shasta Springs, he says, in this land of work, Rama has to do his physical work. He daily cuts wood and brings to his hostess to burn the firewood. He does it. So this work has to be perpetual, and it has to come out of the inspiration of the work itself. It should not be vainly aimed at something, happiness which we will get in the future. And not only that, for those who want practical tips, again he says out of his experience, what are the things that are ideal is something like ideal food habits. Never fill your stomach to the full, because indigestion causes all the problems. You will swear at others if your stomach is upset. Pranayama. When he talks about pranayama, he talks about the technique by which you hold the breath, which is very good for the body. Fill up all your pores of the body also, he says. Each and every aspect of your body must be filled with Om. that pranayama, walk. He says walk and walk alone. Don't talk while you walk. When you talk, you open your mouth. Your walk has to be in a way that you inhale and exhale only through your nostrils. You must not open your mouth while walking, chanting Om. More importantly, avoid criticizing others. This way you are causing the disease germs to pass to yourself and others. Criticizing is a very bad habit. He says we have to avoid at all costs. You are unnecessarily asking for trouble when you criticize others. Hate the sin, not the sinner, says the Bible. That has to be followed. And whenever it is possible, be at solitude with yourself. You may say it's not practical in Kolkata, or it's not practical. It's not so. At least try to be in solitude in the early hours of the morning. Don't leave the tenderness of the morning. All this he tried, he experimented, he lived, he understood it perfectly, and then he gives out to others. So, as I said, these are few glimpses. As a personality, again I have to remind you, Vedanta is allegiance to no personalities. We are not here to make us a strong follower of Rama Tirtha, which he himself will not want to. Otherwise he would have started an institution. All that we are recommending is that there must be a strong inclination to the practical Vedanta that he suggests. Yet, for some of us who are at a lower state, a personality might inspire. And if you want anybody to get inspired, you have to just look up to Swami Rama Tirtha. Even the picture is really inspiring. When you travel to America, he just boarded the ship like this. There's not even a pocket in this dress, you can see. He did not keep one penny with him. And he met an American on the ship. Because he was charming, everybody was magnetically pulled towards him. So that American asked, who do you know in America? Where are you going? He says, I know only one person, and that is you. He says, you are the only person I know. And through him, all the lectures were organized, all the talks were there. And he just captured America. This is all available in the press of the America which came at that time, which is available in the book. Before we conclude, it is very important to remember with gratitude few people who are associated with this. First are the blessed souls, Sardar Puran Singh and Swami Narayana, who are the direct devotees of Swami Rama, who had the blessings to be with them always. It's a very great thing. And all the Americans, because Rama Tirtha never wrote books. All the very dedicated souls who took notes, who organized his talk, like C.F. Andrews, Mrs. Wellman he used to call Suryananda, Mrs. Paul Whitman, Kamalananda, and her mother is Flora, whom he called Champa. He gave all Indian names lovingly and called them Mrs. C. Campbell. All these Americans were faithful enough to take notes, but for whom we would have lost everything. These great thoughts of Rama Tirtha we would have lost for eternity, because he said, I am not a beast of burden to carry all this. He will throw into the ocean. He does not require all this. But all of them preserved this. And Sardar Puran Singh and Swami Narayana, they gathered letters from all over the world, and they were able to produce even the first 3 volumes within 6 years of the Mahasamadhi. It was such a very powerful revelation at that time. Then there is one institute in the corner of the country in Lucknow called this Swami Rama Tirtha Pratishthan. They have been continuously, dedicatedly doing only the work of spreading Swami Rama Tirtha's books. You won't find these books in bookshops. Only in the Pratishthan they will do. And tirelessly, even now, those who are in charge of the institute, they are doing it. And it will continue. The best part is, it is not what is this? Swami Rama Tirtha, when he was asked by the Kishankar Maharaj to come down and speak, he says, doctors say, you have to have appetite, only then you can eat. I don't have appetite to come down now. But don't worry, my thoughts will not get lost. It will be carried by the Ganges. Ganga was so near to. It will be carried by the Ganges. It will be carried by these trees. It will be carried by this winds. Nothing will get lost. Nothing will get lost, he assures. Very true. Like that, Swami Parthasarathi, who really has no allegiance to any personality, who is not directly connected with Rama Tirtha, you can discount all that our Swamiji did. But the very fact that he has brought Swami Rama Tirtha to surface, in each and every private talk or public discourse, never does he forget to mention Swami Rama Tirtha. So So if at all few people in India and abroad know of Swami Rama Tirtha, one of the main architects is Swami Patriot, our gratitude is due to Swami Patriot. And this book, Vedanta Treatise, which he often recommends, and he openly says nothing of the book is mine, because of course it contains Vedanta and Upanishads and Gita, but the essence of Swami Rama Tirtha is captured in this book, and it is a written book. That is why he openly recommends strongly that we all go through the study of the Vedanta Treatise. And lastly, gratitude to Swami Rama himself. It is possible, it is not possible. It is really possible only if we discover the Rama within ourselves. So, I will conclude with only the last and final aspect of Swami Rama's life, which we call as death. But can really Rama die? Impossible. He was immortal self, he can never die. Death cannot capture him. Before he took bath in the Bailing Ganga, in Urdu,
Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.